A couple games into the California road trip, and it's a mixed bag so far for our Edmonton Oilers, but one that is suddenly showing a lot of promise down the stretch for the Oilers. Obviously, I know a lot of people would try and call me out for losing faith in the Oilers here over the past 2 weeks. No, I wouldn't say that. I'd just simply say that I've been kind of saying, hey, if this happens, here's some questions to consider, and that's kind of where we're going. But, friends, now all of a sudden, this Edmonton Oilers team fighting for each other following this Los Angeles Kings debacle that it was, you could say, for the modern NHL, but as well a galvanizing moment for this team, and then that Anaheim Ducks game, which really put it all together. Folks, this is Dolynny TV. Good evening, welcome to the channel. Glad to have you along for another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here again today as we get set to just more or less break down, I guess, the impact that one, Klim Kostin has had on the Oilers, but two, what kind of getting into that nitty gritty game that so many people accuse this Oilers team of not being able to play, all of a sudden has changed things around. But before we get there, folks, if you're new to the channel, what I want you to do is consider hitting that subscribe button tonight simply because, well, as I last checked, we're 87 subscribers away here on Dolynny TV from 10,000. I say we because, hey, I couldn't do this without you, and I am very lucky to have as many of you following me to talk Oilers every day as I do. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Simply put, for the Oilers, well, fighting majors are up over the past couple of weeks here for the Oilers. Obviously, you go back to that Seattle Kraken game, and then you go into this situation now for the Oilers where we found ourselves against the LA Kings the other night. And then you look at that scrum that broke out there. I believe, who was it? The Matthias Janmark got knocked down, and then a puck shot at him, and it was just a melee. But those aren't the kind of melees we've seen from the Edmonton Oilers, and that's kind of what I'm sitting here going at is all of a sudden over the past two games, you've kind of seen the Oilers take a physical edge further to their game, just in terms of the intensity. Like, I know the Oilers have been throwing hits, right? By the metrics of a hit in today's NHL, the Oilers so far this season have actually out-hit quite a few teams. However, the metric does not necessarily gauge how heavy, how impactful that hit is within the game. And I mean, you go into that game last night against the Ducks where, yes, Puljujärvi, for a guy that prior to this year didn't throw the body at all, and now all of a sudden is throwing the body to the metric to get credit for hits, but is suddenly in the past two games two monster hits that one results in a fight and one really good hit that just blows a guy up. Well, hey, you know what? That is fantastic to see out of a guy that, right, is following into that bottom six power forward role that realistically, if Jesse Puljujärvi's not going to be a top six player, that's what he needs to be. But at the same rate, too, if Jesse Puljujärvi's that kind of player in the top six, I don't see how that doesn't benefit him tenfold with the skills that we know he has offensively if he could ever just put it together. So that's where you can really start with this team is for the Oilers. It's really fantastic to see them going out there and getting this bigger body presence engaged within the game. And I think that goes back to when the Oilers first recalled Klim Kostin and put him in the lineup and what he's done since. But you look at kind of the interesting dynamic that creates is suddenly, right, is you kind of drag others into the fight. And I talked about this in my Connor McDavid might request a trade after the season if the Oilers missed the playoffs video there that I did the other day. Simply put, right, Connor has been for every single season in an Oilers uniform the one to drag the rest of the team into the fight. Suddenly now, we've got this Oilers team after that LA Kings game and kind of throughout that LA Kings game dragging themselves into the fight, right? You look at that Seattle Kraken game too. You look at two of our most lopsided results in the past recent memory, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever you want to say. And it's both where there's been a fight in the hockey game. It's been where the Oilers have been physically dominant. It's where the Oilers have scored a lot of goals and not given up a whole heck of a lot against. And you think about, well, Jack Campbell wins a 6-2 game over the Anaheim Ducks here. And realistically, right, he didn't have to face a ton of shots. Sure, it's Anaheim, but it's not like the Oilers just outskilled Anaheim to death. That's the beauty of this. They were working the corners. They were hard and heavy on the forecheck. They were hitting hard. They were not necessarily fighting, but standing up for each other in scrums. And it was just fantastic to see, like, I know I probably should have done a post-game live like everybody else last night, like Gene and Patrick there, but quite simply put, it was one of those things, man. I was so satisfied. I'm like, I'm going to bed. You know what? I don't need to make anything more of this than it was. Let's just enjoy it and get a good sleep. That I did. But for the Oilers, right, it's one of those huge time gets where now all of a sudden you take a bad loss in LA, turn it into a victory in Anaheim, and suddenly you're that much more of a team. And we talked about it for a video ago as well, where I said this Oilers team really isn't a team. They're not much of a team at all, right? They don't stand up for each other. Everything after the whistle is pretty lame. There's really nothing outside extra to try and get them going. And now all of a sudden, you've got that. You've kind of galvanized the group here in the past 2 games, and you've got that as part of your game in this California-Nevada road swing. So now the problem becomes it's too early to jump the gun to see if this actually changes the season for the Oilers, right? This could just be a blip where the Oilers got hot and decided to play a little bit of hockey and decided to get big, mean, and physical like they have guys that are capable of that. But it could also mean that we realistically do go on that 27-13 stretch that is needed to win a playoff spot in the Pacific Division. Thing is, the 27 wins, I think that's more falsified because, you could probably lose one in overtime and win only 25. And as long as somebody falls off in the Pacific Division, you're probably going to make the playoffs, no problemo. And it really depends what the Western Conference shapes up to be as a whole because of the Central Division. So that's where, right, we couldn't afford to lose to Colorado, but we got a point, so we split the difference more or less, and it all shakes out in the end. And when you look at this Oilers roster as it kind of comes together towards the trade deadline, you get Evander Kane back, which is another guy that, like Connor McDavid, can drag players into the fight, and that's where it's going to be very exciting to kind of see what happens. Right now, bad news for Oilers fans, though. Both Winnipeg and Seattle are up 1-0 over their opponents, and Nashville as well up 1-0. Mind you, early in the first, still in all those games, midway through, I guess you could say, but it's one of those tough ones where I don't mean to say you need to be scoreboard watching right now, but if you can notice a team go on a 5-game schneid, skid, whatever you want to say, that isn't the Edmonton Oilers, then that would be where you benefit. The Oilers right now tied with the Calgary Flames with 47 points inside a wild card spot. So that's a big get, right? The Oilers right now with 47 points, and they're 2 up on St. Louis, 3 up on Nashville, and 4 up on Colorado, but Colorado's played 4 less games. They have lost, however, 4 of their last 5. The only win being a 3-2 overtime win against the Edmonton Oilers. So you suddenly think about what that does for the Oilers. If they get 48 and the Colorado Avalanche are 42, suddenly that 4 extra games does not seem to matter as much. But now you think about the results here over the first 2 games of the 8 o'clock starts out west on the Pacific Coast is for the Oilers. You've gotten the results more or less you need. Maybe not needing both wins necessarily, right? You probably could have used those. But the LA Kings game serves a purpose nonetheless. And for this Oilers team now, we can go out there and roll ourselves some kind of victory against Anaheim and hopefully a victory against the San Jose Sharks, and then go in against the Vegas Golden Knights and sit there and see what we can't get going against them. But your biggest victory out of that LA Kings game is obviously all the fighting, all the hitting, all the high event hockey not pertaining to goal scoring in that one. Friends, I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. I really got to figure out what's going on with my eye here. It's all twitchy tonight, but thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one.